Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. We are so excited today. This topic comes up so often with clients that, talking about how do they navigate career transitions? How do they prepare for that? And so I'm super excited. We have Jenn Smith with us today. Jenn, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Vicki. It's a pleasure.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you here. And I know we have lots of awesome things to get into today. And audience, let me thank you for being here. We know you have a choice as to what podcast you listen to. And we're super grateful that you're listening to us from 48 different countries, which is amazing. So thank you for showing up and joining us. So this is a really important conversation today. And so as you're listening to this podcast, make sure that you share with a friend who might need to hear this, right? We're going to be talking about, when do you pivot or when are you going to get pivoted? And so we're going to be talking about careers and how we can navigate and transition through some of that uncertainty. So let me give you a little background on Jenn before we get started. So Jenn believes that career success doesn't have to be at the expense of a radiantly happy and healthy lifestyle. Love that. Mm-hmm. She is a sought-after career and HR consultant with professional roots grounded deep within the corporate America. Jenn brings over 15 years of progressive experience as a global HR leadership across multiple industries and Fortune 200 companies. She is also the founder of Flourish Careers and the host of the Flourish Careers podcast. So make sure you earmark that podcast and check out some of the career advice that she shares. She's on a mission to support heart-based, career-minded professionals in navigating the changing world of work and taking those next right steps toward a happier, healthier career. And when she's not working, you can find her road tripping with her pack, her husband, and her pup. They love exploring all of Western New York has to offer. So, Jenn, thanks so much for being here. And I'm going to steal your line from earlier. We are in two different countries, but we are actually neighbors.
Yes.
I love that when you were talking about that earlier. I thought that was terrific. So welcome. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, super excited. So let's get into the conversation. I hear this so often from clients. When do you make that change? When do you pivot? Or do you wait to be pivoted? And there's lots of uncertainty that goes along with both. So how does someone find that right career for them? Let's kind of start there.
Yes, let's jump right into it. So when you think about it, your career is so much of your life. And so, you look at some of the numbers, you're going to spend 90,000 hours of your life working. That's a third of your life. And so to me, when you spend that much time doing something, we want to make sure that it's in alignment. And what I mean by alignment is that I truly believe your work should generate energy versus draining your energy. So you want to feel good about what you're doing. And I know we don't live in this utopia world where it's always going to be perfect and sunshines and rainbows. That's not what I'm trying to say here. It's really about just feeling aligned in your work. Are you making an impact in the way that you want to make an impact? Are you leveraging your strengths in a way that feels good and you're able to give, to your team or to an organization? Are you in alignment with your values from a core value perspective and a lifestyle value perspective? And so to me, it's just really dissecting you as a person and figuring out how to align you as a human being into your career path. And a lot of us just fall into these things for whatever reason. I've done it myself. And then it's like, okay, I fell into this. I've been in it. 10 years have gone by. What am I doing? And so it's kind of taking that pause to reflect and then almost realign sometimes to something that's going to feel better for that season of career that you're currently in.
Yeah, I love that. And two things I want to touch on there. So falling into a job, like I hear this all the time. And I remember I was having a conversation with this woman and I said, she resigned from her job, like proactively. She was like, I'm done. This is not in alignment. So she knew that. And I said to her, okay, so you've got a blank canvas. What do you want to do? And it went dead quiet. And I
Oh
thought,
no.
oh, did we get disconnected? And she said to me, she goes, oh my God, Vicky, I'm so embarrassed to even tell you this. She goes, I've never even thought of
Thought
it.
about it. I know.
Yeah. So how do we start to think about it,
Yeah.
Jen? Like,
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, it took a lot of bravery for her to even say that, right? Because she was like,
Hmm.
I've never even had to interview really. Like, I've just
Yeah.
been recruited and fallen into jobs. So how do we start to look at what's next?
Yes, I love this question. And I've spoken with so many people that have just gotten off track and sometimes they even say like I don't even know what I like to do anymore, so if you go down the path of just being burnt out and just not even knowing yourself anymore. And so to me it starts with your values, and I like to break them out by your core values and your lifestyle values. And the
Mm,
reason that I break those out is because our lifestyle will change throughout our career. And it's important to know what you value in this season of career, your lifestyle in this season, whether you have littles at home, whether your littles are leaving home, whether you don't
mm,
have any littles and you want to do something that just feels really fun, like whatever that is. So it's really dissecting that. And when I think of core values, I think of, things like, I value harmony. I value solitude. Not that I don't like working and collaborating, I do, but most of my time I want to be in quiet time. Another core value, sometimes people really like thrill or energy or excitement in their careers or in their lives. And so it's taking a pause and figuring out what those are, and then
mm,
figuring out those lifestyle. And we have so many choices now with career. It's so fun because we have choices to work remote. We have choices to do a hybrid. We have choices to go into an office. We have choices to live in a van and travel the world if we want to. I mean, we have choices and it's really fun. And sometimes if you just kind of take that pause and reflect and figure out what that foundation is for right now. And then it's really important to take those values and then go find organizations that are a match for you and those values right now. So that's where it starts. And then I'm going to share two more components just because I can't help myself. So
yes,
the
please.
two, the two other components. So once you have that foundation of your values, the two other components to help kind of dissect this is starting with the industry that
Mm,
you either are interested in or you want to make an impact in. So
mm,
that's a really good place because sometimes we're out there and we're like, okay, I need a job or I need to make a change. And we just scroll LinkedIn and we see what's posted and we're kind of reacting. We don't want to update our resume. We're like, it just feels like such a drag. But if you start to think about, hey, how do I want to make an impact in this next role? Or what am I really interested in? That can be really interesting umbrella for you to start from. And then you can start. So say like you want to work in the wellness industry, huge industry. So then
mm,
break it down. Do I want to work in, something related to the mind or the body or the heart or the spirit or whatever? And then find companies that match those values. So that can help you narrow it down. And then the other piece is the role. So what job are you going to do? And to
mm,
me, that is all related to your energy. So you want to do more work that's energizing to you. So things that you like doing and that you're good at. Sometimes people just keep doing something because they like it, or I'm sorry, they keep doing it because they're good at it, but they don't like it. And that's
yeah.
going to end up draining your energy in the long run. So something that you like and that you're good at. So it's the core values as the foundation, and then the industry you want to make an impact and the role that generates your energy. And those are kind of the key components to figure out what might be next.
I love that. I love that. And you're right, because sometimes we are put into roles that we don't even like,
Right.
but we're efficient, we're good at it, we get a reputation that we're known for that. So figuring out what those things are is super important, and knowing what your strengths are, right? Like, because when you know your strengths, and oftentimes I'll ask clients this, like, what are your natural strengths? And they're like, oh, I don't know. What do you mean? And so when you do what your strengths are naturally, it's not hard work then,
Right.
right? Because from an energetic perspective, as to what you were just saying, then you're doing things that don't take a lot of effort. It just
Right.
comes naturally.
Naturally. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
what kinds of questions would you ask yourself when is that time to pivot?
Mm-hmm.
Or what are some clues that you might be getting to a place where you're going to get pivoted?
Yes, very interesting. So I have to say that I always recommend having some kind of plan B in the back of your mind, because to your point, you never know when you're going to get pivoted. And with the economy and everything the way that it is today, you always want to have something at least just brewing back there so you're not completely caught off guard. But one of the things that I like recommending to folks is do an energy audit. So at the end of your day or at the end of your week, do an audit and say, hey, what really energized me? Was there anything that energized me this week? Or am I completely exhausted and drained? And what are those things that exhausted me and drained me, and why? And so sometimes doing that on a regular basis can give you some clues or some patterns that you might start seeing in terms of A, what do I want to do more of? B, what do I not want to do? And how is this role in this job in this company right now either cultivating or draining my energy? So that could be something. The other thing I like to think about too is, are you learning new and valuable skills? So that's a big one for folks, because when you can get bored out very easily in a role. And so the lucky thing for us is that things are changing so rapidly. So you're most likely going to be learning new things, whether you want to or not. But that can be a key piece. Am I learning new and valuable skills? Am I aligned to the mission of this organization? Or maybe the mission or the leadership has changed and it's just no longer feeling like a fit for you anymore. And that's okay. Like recognizing it and then realizing it and then knowing it enough that it's not going to be a fit for the long term. I remember feeling really empty and unfulfilled at one point. I was like, oh, I just feel like I have so much more to give. There's like so much more in me, but this situation is not allowing for that to come out. So those are some different ideas or clues that I've heard and that I felt myself when thinking about making a change.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important. And so that goes back into knowing yourself,
Yes.
right? Like really knowing what energizes you, what doesn't. And energizing doesn't mean bouncing off the walls.
Right.
That's for our audience, right?
Right.
It's really about tuning in. So to your point, where the clues, where the patterns that you're seeing. I just want to go back a second to when you were talking about like seeing those job postings. Like one thing I hear a lot, I hear it from all ages and stages, but in particularly the newer, more emerging leaders, saying things like, oh, I sent my resume in, I'm not getting a response. Or, I see all these job postings and, I apply, nobody contacts me. What do I do? So maybe talk a little bit about how do you navigate what's happening from even from an AI perspective as to how resumes are being scanned.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a great question. I get this question all the time. And I will tell you that the online job market is just saturated. And quite frankly, I would even go as far as saying that it's broken at this point, because it's inundated. Like the systems are just inundated. I'll tell you, when my last role in corporate was in talent acquisition, and I led a team and we were recruiting early career folks, and we would post a job and within 24 hours, we'd have hundreds of applicants. And when you're a recruiter I can only speak for kind of larger organizations, but you're responsible for maybe 25 or 30 jobs that you're filling at once. You cannot possibly get through hundreds of applicants for each of those jobs. You can do the math and see what happens there. It's nearly impossible. And so that's why there's AI to help scan for keywords. And it's really hard to beat the system, quote unquote, because you don't know what the recruiters are putting in the system to look for. So that can be really hard. And so my recommendation there, my guidance there is to find humans that work at the companies you're interested in and connect with them. Try to talk with them, find out what it's like to work there, see where your skills and abilities might be a good fit. And there's something out there. I don't know if you've heard the term, the hidden job market. Have you heard this term, Vicki? Yeah.
So share that.
Yeah, it's not something that I don't love the term, but the idea is that people are getting jobs before they're ever even posted to those big job boards.
Yeah.
Because usually we're all, you've been in these situations where somebody resigns or retires or whatever it is. You go into a team meeting, everyone looks at each other. Oh, Cassie's resigning. Oh, who do you know? And everyone's like, oh, I know this person. I know. So most of the time there's already a recommendation or a referral coming through before those jobs are even getting posted, not let alone the hundreds of people that are going to be applying. So the idea of the hidden job market is if you can network and start to get to know people at your ideal companies, you get thought of when those conversations are happening, when someone's retiring, resigning, or they're adding headcount or whatever's going on. So that's kind of the idea there. And it's really about networking.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. So I'll share a personal example on that one. When I was between jobs, so the company I was working for had made the decision to exit Canada. And my boss was like, okay, Vicky, so what do you think you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, okay, what are the companies you like? So to your point earlier, finding the industry, finding the company that potentially aligns from a value perspective, mission, vision. So I said to him a few companies, just as we were, exploring. And literally 2 weeks later, someone who was a third party supplier to us, we were speaking, and he said to me, Vicky, Bombay is looking for a president for Canada.
Yay.
And I went, oh, I love Bombay. And he goes, I think you should apply. And I was like, oh gosh, no, I'm not ready for that job. And he goes, what do you mean? Like you're running this organization basically. And I'm like, well, no, I have a CEO. He goes, yeah. Well, you're running things. And I was like, what do I have to lose? Right. So I would, to your point, Jen, I would have never known about this opportunity had he not mentioned it to me, and he encouraged me to apply.
Yes.
So of course I went back, found out who the CEO was. I went and shopped their business because it was Bombay. And I was like, oh yeah, they really need me. And then I put a pitch forward and said, hey, I'm shopping your Canadian stores. There's quite a bit of opportunity here. I think I could add an extreme amount of value. I've been in the retail industry for X years. And within a week, I was on a plane going to Dallas to interview. And so to your point, network. Let people know what you're interested in. Meet people, find out about companies. Are you in alignment with that company? I think that's so important. And what I heard you say earlier is being very intentional. Know your values, know who those companies are that you align with, because you're not going to align with everyone.
That's right.
And it's not just about the black hole that resumes go into, right?
That's right.
Work at this.
Right. That's right. Great example of the hidden job market in action, especially for a very high level role. And that's the thing. I think the higher level the roles are, the more the networking comes into play, because you're not going to go out and post a job up for a president of an organization online and hope to find the right person. It's going to come through the people that you know that can do the job. Same thing with pretty much every level position that's out there. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on behind the scenes. And I think it's really important for folks to understand that. A lot of people don't understand that, and they get very frustrated when their resume doesn't get picked or they don't hear back. And that's why job searching can be such a drag, because you just feel like you're doing all this work for nothing, but sometimes you're just doing the wrong work. And, the thing that I talk to people the most about is networking, but also knowing what you want. You have to, no one knows what you want. You have to know what you want. And that's really where the values, the industry, and the role come into play.
I love it. Yes. I think that's so important. And so there's also this, I hear this a lot, especially from young people, right? Yeah. There's this myth that you have to go to university. Yeah. You have to pick a profession. And then what? Right? Because you're 18 years old going into, something that's costing a lot of money,
right,
to get educated on. So talk to us about that myth of you pick one career focus.
It is so much pressure. It's so much pressure to, especially when you're 17, 18 years old, to think about, oh my gosh, I have to pick one thing that I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And so first and foremost, take that pressure off. You don't have to pick one thing that you're going to do for the rest of your life. And so I feel like this day and age, careers are much more fluid and people are making changes a lot more than ever before. So it's not how it used to be where we get a job and we spend 35 years in that job and we retire. It's not the same anymore. It's very different. And so first, take that pressure off and then think about what might be fun, so start your career, get your foot in the door with an organization that you're interested in, that you can learn and grow with, and see where your career takes you. So there's a Sheryl Sandberg quote that comes to mind. It's something to the effect of, if you're offered a seat on the rocket ship, don't ask what seat, just get on, basically.
Yes.
So, and I think early in your career, that's pretty good advice. Like, get out there, find the organizations that you think are fun, that you think are interesting, that you can grow with, get your foot in the door, and then see what happens. I didn't know what HR did in an organization. I had a little bit of an understanding. I started my career in operations, and then I saw what HR does for an organization. And that's how I moved into human resources. So I think when you're early, you just don't know what you don't know. So start somewhere and then just know that you don't have to have the pressure of a 40-year career or 40-year decision. Get your foot in the door and just move around and do things that are fun and exciting for you.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, I certainly didn't, my plan was never to go into retail, right? I sort of, like what we were talking about earlier, I sort of fell into that role, not knowing how rewarding that would be, because I was exposed to, because people have this, mentality that retail is cashiering, ringing up customers, right? And yes, that's part of it, but it's like, you get exposed to marketing, supply chain, buying, merchandise, like all of these aspects. And then my career took a total pivot, right? And yourself, you were just describing, right? You were in operations and you're doing this role, and then you pivot over to HR. Like it's what I take from that is keeping yourself open to the possibilities.
Yes.
If you're learning, how do you transfer?
Yeah. And, along with that is that kind of that self-reflection to figure out, in terms of alignment, what would be most in alignment for me next. So then it's like, okay, I get my foot in the door, I'm learning and growing. I see, oh, HR, it's the people side of the business. Oh, I really love that. That generates my energy. Oh, this organization over in biotech is really aligned with my core values and where I would want to make an impact. So now I'm going to make a pivot in, a role into something that generates my energy in an industry that I want to make an impact in. And so you can kind of take those principles and, use those to help with the alignment in your career. Again, it's never going to be perfect, but it at least gives you a little bit of a formula to help make you feel a little bit more comfortable, happier, and healthier in your various roles.
And just say yes. Put your hand up. Say yes.
Love it.
I actually, I'll share one more story because there might be a few more, but an example of a client who phenomenal executive had done a multitude of roles and responsibilities within her organization and was pivoted out because a new leader came in and said, you're not going to, I don't want you to stay here. We're going to change you. And of course she was like, what? How? I'm a high achiever. I've done all this stuff. They packaged her out, but then the company came back to her and said, hey, we have this role in risk management. We would love you to take the role on. Right. And she's like, why would you pick me? Right. And so she called me after and she goes, well, I told them no. And I go, why would you tell them no? And she goes, oh, because I don't have those skills. And I go, how do you not have those skills? I said, you've ran marketing, you've ran IT, and so I started naming off all of the responsibilities that she's had. And she goes, oh, I guess maybe I was qualified. And I said, probably overqualified.
Right.
Right. So I think there's also that aspect of it, right? Is don't sell yourself short.
Right.
I love what you're sharing of, really being mindful and have that shift to see, what are the possibilities that you can do.
Yeah. And that story is, I hear that story all the time where people actually talk themselves out of something because they think they have to go back to school, or they think they have to have all these different skills or experiences before they even explore it. And
Yeah.
so my thought is, hey, instead of just thinking you have to go back for some kind of degree and invest all this money, or you don't think you could do it, go ask the questions, go talk to somebody, and find out what they're looking for and find out what the skills are needed. And that really goes into what I would consider transferable skills. So to your example, she didn't realize the skills and experiences and how they would transfer into a different department that she's never worked in before. And that's a big thing with making a pivot, is recognizing what your transferable skills are and how they would be beneficial in another area. And I will tell you, so many job seekers cannot see this for themselves. And so that's where I really recommend just asking a friend or a colleague or somebody to help you with that, because somebody outside, just like you did for her, I do this for people all the time, is connecting those dots for folks and making them realize that they have so much to offer, even if it's not an exact match.
Yeah, I love that. And that's why, like, individuals like yourself who, your specialty is really about helping people figure that out. What does
Right.
that next career look like? That is so important to understand. What are those transferable skills? What are your strengths? And you can't see it yourself, right?
That's right.
Because
Yeah.
especially if you've been pivoted, because that
Mm.
mindset is very much, oh, they just let me go. It must be me. I'm not worthy. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think part of what you're doing is helping people to reconnect with
Mm-hmm.
that worthiness and knowing what you're offering.
That's right. Yeah. And it really does start with the mindset. And it's so hard when you do get pivoted and you are in that space of like, oh my gosh, it's very heavy. And so it's almost like, okay, now what am I going to learn from this experience, and how am I going to carry that forward? But it takes time to process. So you can't just, if you are in a situation where you're pivoted, it takes time to process that and figure it out. And I always recommend, like, give yourself some grace as you're figuring out what's next. And don't be afraid to talk to people and ask for help, because people genuinely want to help others, especially when it comes to job and career. They just need to know how to help you, quite frankly. So if you say to someone like, hey, I really need help, I don't even know what I'm good at anymore, they'll help you. Also, there's lots of assessments that can open up those blind spots for you as well. If you're feeling shy about asking for help, there's tons of assessments and tools out there that you could do on your own, even just to get you started, just to give you a little boost to get started and kind of point you in a new direction.
Yeah, I love that. And you're right. There's so many resources
Yeah.
available. So just to kind of summarize, like, I've heard a number of things. So aligning with your values,
Mm-hmm.
know your core values plus your lifestyle values, which is super important because oftentimes we compartmentalize the two.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is important to know, how does a job really impact you in all aspects of your life. Doing that energy audit, I think that was a really important comment, like, recognizing what drains you, what propels you. And then understanding, like, my favorite, the system can be broken. So you owe it to yourself to get out there and network, and looking for a job is a job. Um,
Yes.
so that's really important. What other advice or tip would you want to share with our audience they could do today if they're like, maybe they're, being pivoted in the very next, little bit, or they've made the conscious decision to pivot? What would you recommend?
I would recommend pausing. So I would recommend not getting out on LinkedIn and scrolling the big job boards, or looking at what all your friends are doing, or wishing you were at your friend from high school and where they are in their career. I would recommend just pausing, taking some time for yourself, doing something fun that you haven't been able to do because you've been so hard at work, and just give yourself some space to have new ideas coming in. I feel like so many times when we're in our careers, it's like, go, go, go. We can't even catch our breath, and we're just running and running and running. And we don't have the space to even know what would be fun for us. And so I would say pause, give yourself some space, give yourself some grace, do some reflection, and really kind of make a proactive, conscious effort to align yourself with your next best role, whether you've been pivoted or you're thinking of pivoting. And I think, just by doing that, your next decision is going to be much more fun. It's going to be much more impactful. And again, when we're spending 90,000 hours of our lives in our jobs, they should be fun. They should be energizing.
Exactly. Exactly. Love that. And I never even calculated it to 90,000 hours. That's a lot of time.
A lot. It's probably even more because we're so connected. So it's probably
Yeah.
even more than that nowadays.
Love that. Love that. Love that. So how can people find you? How can they reach out and connect with you, hear more tips and
Sure.
feedback on how they can, flourish in their careers?
Thank you, Vicki. So my website is flourish.careers, and I'm on Instagram at flourish.careers as well. LinkedIn is a little harder to find me because Jenn Smith is a very common name. So if you search Jenn Smith Flourish Careers, you'll probably be able to find me on LinkedIn. I'm active on all the platforms. I also have a podcast, the Flourish Careers podcast, where I share lots of tips and tricks about making a career change. And I call it heart-based career planning. So it's really in alignment with you and your heart and your spirit and all of those things that's going to make it more aligned. So any of those places, I would welcome connection, questions, anything to support folks.
Awesome. Awesome. So you hear that, audience, you know how to connect with Jenn. Any courses, programs, any specials that you have in the works right now?
Thank you for offering that. So I do have a course. It's called From Fried to Flourishing. So
Ooh.
this is for folks that are kind of drained in their careers and they're ready for a change, but might not know what's next. So it really walks you step by step through, mindset shifts and all that career clarity that we talked about earlier, and then all the practical and tactical about getting a job. So I take all my insider knowledge from HR and talent acquisition and share that with everybody that I can to help them not only figure out what's next, but also land the role that they're looking for from that insider perspective. So that's also on my website. There's multiple. So you can do a self-paced course, you can do it with group coaching, or you can do it with one-on-one coaching.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. So audience that's listening, if you know somebody who is getting ready to pivot or who has just been pivoted, make sure you check out Jenn's information and her podcast, the Flourish Career podcast, like lots of great resources and information to support that journey. And just one last thing I want to add to that is it's not the end of the world when you get pivoted. It can, well, most times it's the biggest opportunity ever. And so it is that shift in seeing possibilities, right? It feels hard in the beginning, but it may just be the best thing that's ever happened to you.
Yes.
So that shift is important.
It is. That optimistic mindset is just wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Vicki.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And Jenn, thanks so much for being here today. This has been terrific. Really, really love the work that you're doing and helping, individuals really connect with, being their very best selves. And you spend a lot of time at work. So, find those careers that really energize you. That's super important. I think we both have found our careers that energize us.
Yes.
And it makes a world of difference when you get up every morning and you want to go and do what you're meant to be doing.
That's right.
Yeah. And let me thank our audience. Thank you for being here today. We shared some great information with you, some great tips to help you, think about if you're pivoting or if you have been pivoted, how to start to navigate that situation and connect more from the heart center. I will share also, if you're looking for support in how to network, go to Will Empowered. It's 1L, WIL Empowered. And we have an on-demand networking course where we meet once a month and we have a live Q&A, but we also have an interactive session to really help you build your skills. And at the same time, you're building connections with other people. And those are priceless. So check that out at the Will Empowered website. And I want to thank you again for chiming in, and we'll see you at our next Will Talk podcast. Jenn, thanks again so much for being here.
Thanks, Vicki.